everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of Who Let You In Here? I'm John Kay, and with me, as always, is Steve Baselove Lupinski.
Hello.
Hey there. Today's episode features radio host and program director Phil Kukawinski of Alt 1051 in Louisville, Kentucky. Let's bring Phil in now. There he is.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, bud?
See, how are you, sir?
Things are all right over here. No complaints.
How's life's treating you well?
Yeah, it hasn't been too bad. I mean, I'm still employed. I'm healthy. So what more can I ask for?
Love it. Love it. That's the humble professional response. I like that a bunch. Start from the beginning. We know you're the program director at Alt 1051 now, but your journey was not an overnight thing. Take us back to the inspiration and the catalyst. What caused you to get this music bug, and what ultimately led you to seek radio as a profession, as a career?
Oddly enough, radio wasn't on my my radar when I first started getting into music. I was part of that MySpace era where it's like, you discover bands that nobody's heard of. Like they're just, it's some underground band with 100 fans out in, wherever the hell in the US. But that, that was the time where, you could get that music, just by being on a computer. So I started really getting into finding underground bands and stuff like that. And when I started going to school, I actually planned on doing more on the record side of things. Like I wanted to start my own record label for some of these smaller bands and stuff like that. And when I was going to school at Grand Valley, I didn't particularly like my roommate. So I was trying to get out of the room as much as I could. So they had a college radio station there. So I had joined up just to kill a couple of hours and started kind of really getting into it. But also at the same time, I was calling radio stations, in Detroit, specifically 89X in Detroit, and eventually just got a call from the night host at the time, who was Hudson, and just said, hey, like, I need somebody to come in and answer phones, just twice a week, just be in the back, all that. And ended up loving it. It had a great time with it. And that started to snowball into more and more and more responsibilities. And that's when I really started to get more into the radio part of it and started to enjoy it a lot more. So, it was just kind of by chance that I fell into radio to begin with. But, that's where it all started was, doing college radio and then interning at 89X and then climbing the ladder from there. Like I said, up until trying to remember how long it's been at this point. What was it? 2017, I think, is when everything closed down there. And then moved on to Scranton, was there for less than 2 years, and then moved here, and now I've been here for a year and a half. But yeah, it's been a journey, like you said.
Wait, Steve, you have a question?
Yeah. When you, I know you started out, interning at 89X. Did you go to schooling for radio at all?
I actually didn't, no. I was going to school for, I started as a business major, and then after a semester of that, I thought, not for me. So I switched to communication. And I took a lot of different classes that were more audio focused. So a lot of production. I took a couple of classes that were like, actual like recording studio classes and stuff like that. So I learned a lot that way. But during my time interning as well, I learned so much about how everything works that, after I think a year and a half of interning, I had the conversation with my boss, Jay. I was like, should I go to like a school like Specs Howard in Detroit, where a lot of radio people go? And he's like, at this point, it's not worth your time. Like, you've kind of learned most of it. You'd just be you'd be wasting a lot of, money and time doing that. So I didn't go, but a lot of the classes that I ended up taking for my degree were radio focused.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I think I didn't know that about you, but I wasn't quite sure, because I know like probably about 90% of people that are in a radio, in Metro Detroit, majority of them at least gone to Specs Howard or some form of schooling for broadcasting.
Yeah.
I know there was like a few that didn't, and I thought you were one of them, but I wasn't sure. So
yeah, I'm one of the few outliers.
well, so it worked out for you though. So
yeah, and I try to tell that to a lot of people. Like when I first moved to Louisville, I went to Western Kentucky University and taught a quick like 2-hour class thing. Like they had radio professionals that came in and talked to some of the students. And one of the things that I told them, it's like, being part of a program like they were in, where it's very similar to how Specs Howard was, it's great, but it's not always for everybody. Like some people want, a broader range of things that they can learn, or they want to be able to emphasize in something else. It doesn't hurt to have, a wider background than that, to be able to do multiple things, as opposed to like, you went to school for 6 months and you know how to operate a radio board and that's it. Like, so you want to have, a vast amount of skills, but, the schools that are, essentially just trade schools for radio, like they pound it into you. Like, this is what radio is. This is, what you're going to learn. So, it works for a lot of people. Like there's a lot of successful people that I know personally that went to Specs Howard, and there are a lot of people that, just went to regular college. There's some people that didn't go to school at all. So
what would you say surprised you the most about working in radio when you first began your career? And then at the same time, what surprises you most now, over a decade later?
I think the thing that surprised me most, kind of going into it, a lot of people have this sense of, it's like, oh, you work in radio, like that must be a really like cool and fun job. And it's like, yeah, it is. But at the same time, it's still a job. Like there's a lot that goes on, aside from sitting in a booth talking into a microphone all day. There's a lot of different jobs that people do. There's a lot of gears in the machine that, force it to keep running. So, when you see the behind the scenes for a lot of that, and you have to learn, how to do all of those different things and combine, the programming with the on air, with the promotions, with marketing, with sales. There's a lot that really goes into it that, you don't think of right from the start when it comes to radio. So when I first started out, and it's like, okay, well, you got to work with these different departments and you got to do that. It's like, whew, okay, all right. Well, I'm sure I'll get the hang of it. And it doesn't get easier. even as I've done it for years and years, it does not get easier having all of those different departments work together. So, that was really the first shock that I had when I was starting out. Now it's more about just how radio in itself functions. Up until really like this pandemic hit, we were starting to get more of that like anxiety around, we're competing against satellite radio. We're competing against streaming. We're now competing against, a lot of video content that you can get online or at home. And there are just so many different options, outside of terrestrial radio. So we were, that was a lot of, stress and anxiety for a long time. But then this pandemic hit, and I think more and more people are starting to kind of come back to, the importance of local radio and, being able to be in the moment in your community. So especially here in Louisville, with the different protesting that's going on because of the Breonna Taylor case, that was here. So, we were able to have a lot of conversations with, people that are protesting. We're able to talk to the mayor. We're able to talk to different, leaders of different protest groups. And it's all local, and it's all stuff that our community cares more about than somebody out, and on the West Coast that is,
you're on that platform to do so.
Yeah. So, the importance of being able to be local and all of that makes it so, it's just easier to communicate and be part of your community. So I think it really took something like, the pandemic and the protesting and all of that for people to really kind of get back to, it's like, oh, like this is something that I have that's free and makes me comfortable. So, I think right now, a lot of radio stations are trying to focus more on keeping things local, keeping things, part of the community. We're starting to step back from the, corporate kind of programming where one superhead is saying, here's what these 20 stations are going to do, and, kind of giving a little more freedom back to individual stations. So, that's a plus. But long story short of that, there's less fear and anxiety right now that when it comes to things like streaming and all of that, and the industry kind of changing.
Very good. You already brought it up. I was going to ask it a bit later. Oh, what do you got there? A little iced tea?
We'll call it iced tea. Sure.
Okay.
I'm in Louisville. I'm drinking some bourbon.
There you go, buddy. Very good. One of our fan members actually.
That's what this is too. It's just cola.
Sure.
One of our fan club members actually works for Bullet Bourbon, so that's kind of cool.
Nice.
So when you talked about going back to the local, kind of like getting back to the radio roots in a way, when your exit came with 89X, it was a result of downsizing by, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I'm correct. It was a result of downsizing by the parent company that owned the station.
Yes.
And which I believe was Bell Media, but much like Bell Media, iHeartMedia in the U.S., which I believe those two companies are essentially, one is Bell Media is the Canadian version of iHeartMedia in a sense.
In a sense, yeah.
In a sense, let's just go with it for a minute. Yeah. No one's going to fact check this. We're going to be okay. But when iHeartMedia filed for bankruptcy and they started offloading radio stations, they publicly stated that, we're based on the information that we're getting at this time and the way the music industry is going, we think that investing more locally, and having a much more stronger local footprint in radio is really what's necessary and what's needed now. The thing is back in the 80s, before all the big broadcasts, before the FCC loosened broadcasting regulations, companies weren't able to own multiple different stations and essentially a monopoly. So what happened is it used to be local. It used to be like this. My father was a DJ. It was in radio for 25 years. And it used to be that the DJs chose what to play. And sure, they play the hits and things like that because they're hits. But they're also playing deep tracks and things off the beaten path and whatnot. And so, when the big companies came in and kind of grabbed their cash, once the cash ran out, they're like, all right, you guys can have it back.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shame, So,
yeah.
But so you have seen a much more a greater focus on local. Do you find is the increased focus on local from mainstream radio, is that benefiting local artists tangibly now? If so, or if not, why? How can local artists tap into this new focus?
I think with that local focus, there definitely is the opportunity for a lot of local artists to really, start to connect with their local radio stations. It's, I don't know if it's going to be the best example, but it's the best example that I can currently give. With my station right now, we have our playlist, and, we play the things like the 21 Pilots and, the bigger bands that you're going to expect to hear on alternative radio. But also at the same time, we have a lot of focus on a couple of different local bands that we have with My Morning Jacket and White Reaper, both being from Louisville. And, they have new music out, so we're playing the new music. We're playing it more than a standard station across the country would play, something like that. So we're able to kind of push the things that are part of our community that we know that our community is going to, embrace more than somebody else would. So when you have more and more stations that have a mentality like that, where they're willing to step out and support some of these artists, it gives that ability to kind of, grow their local fan base even more. Bands like, My Morning Jacket doesn't really need our help. They can sell out Red Rocks and be fine. So, it's less about that in that scenario. So like I said, it's not the best example that I can give, but it's currently what we're doing. But even still, like, when I was working in Detroit, of course, we had the Homeboy Show, which showcased all local music. And, we were able to keep that running for years and years and years. It was, like if you were in a local band in the Detroit area, you knew about the show. And when I got to Scranton and I was programming there, I did pretty much the same thing where, I started up a show from scratch, and now the host that is hosting it out there, I still keep up with him. He's up for, a couple of local awards for hosting the show and, for basically showcasing these bands. So, when that focus is there and it's, more towards the community and less towards, mass marketing, cookie cutter kind of, bullshit, essentially, there's a lot of opportunity for those artists to take advantage of that and to really form those relationships with radio.
What artists or bands are on your radar right now that you think that our audience has for sure heard of? And then at the same time, what artists have they probably not heard of that are on your radar that you're digging these days?
Well, from a local level, I think White Reaper is one that people should, if they don't know, they should know.
Love them.
So much fun. They have that new album they put out just has a really cool, like, kind of 70s rock sound. And, they put on a hell of a live show, if we can ever get fucking live shows going again. But yeah, if you haven't heard of White Reaper, please go and check them out because they're fantastic. Some of the other stuff that, has really been kind of popping up on my radar has really just been all over the place, which has kind of been the benefit of what alternative is. It's, in itself, it's supposed to be a format that breaks all sorts of barriers. So, just with what I'm playing currently, we have things like 21 Pilots and Cage the Elephant and the Black Keys, bands that, are really staples for the format. But also at the same time, I can play things like Bring Me the Horizon, which is a little bit heavier for alternative. And I can also play Run the Jewels, which, you go straight into hip hop. And, so it's all about just kind of juggling all sorts of different sounds and being so different from what everything else is, out there. So, that's really a lot of, the fun that I get to have with getting to pick the music. But yeah, I think right now, it's definitely White Reaper. It's definitely the new Run the Jewels album I'm in love with. It's kind of all over the place.
So I'm not sure if it originated in Chicago, but that's what comes to mind. Have you heard of the radio format Urban Alternative?
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak on that? Because unless I'm speaking out of school here, it sounds like that's kind of what you're talking about, where it's like we can go to the extreme on some of the rock, bordering on metal side of things, but at the same time we can lean into hip hop as well and kind of bridge the gap between a couple typically separate music communities, even though they're separate, on paper or in the charts, but in reality, in a scene, people are going from one show to the other all the time. And I think that that's part of what stations like yours are helping do, is bridge that gap and say, hey, we're all listening to the same kind of music, really.
Yeah. I to be perfectly honest, like I can't speak too much about like urban alternative as a name. Like I've heard it kind of thrown around, but another benefit that I have here is, in our office, in our cluster, we have 5 radio stations. and 2 of them are on the urban side. And, you know, I spent a lot of time talking with the program director for those stations, and, you know, everybody bounces ideas off of each other. But, you know, one thing that we, you know, that we're able to really talk about and, you know, kind of dive a little bit deeper into is there are a lot of those sounds that exactly what you're talking about, where it's not necessarily like this group versus this group versus this group. And, you know, they kind of blend together. You know, you have people that, you know, they're going to really enjoy, you know, Run the Jewels, but they also like Bring Me the Horizon, and they also like Taylor Swift. You know, it's music, and, you know, it's just about what you like. So being able to have a station that, you know, can give listeners exactly that, you know, is, I mean, that just comes down to knowing who your listener is, knowing your community, and providing them with what they ask for. So when you have, you know, an urban alternative, so to speak, you know, it's just taking specific sounds that, you know, people enjoy. You know, I mean, I think if you're going to go into that world of, you know, alternative hip hop, and even right now with kind of the emo hip hop, I mean, just looking at some of these artists, I mean, at least on the alternative side, Pao Fu, you know, has been huge, and that's starting to blow up. 24K Golden, Run the Jewels, even Juice World with some of the songs on his new album, you know, are kind of more in the alternative and rock world. So, you know, people like to take artists and songs and kind of put them in a box and say, this is what you are. Like, this is the audience that is going to like you. And that's not always necessarily the case. So, you know, being able to branch out from all of that and expand on that sound really gives you the opportunity to connect with a whole bunch of different, necessarily boxes of groups.
Love it. Love it. What would you say guides your decision-making when it comes to playing a song on air or an artist on air? You know, how much, and to that point, how much leeway do you have and do you give your on-air hosts when it comes to what to play and whatnot?
Well, for starters, it's just me. I got nobody else on the air right now, which hopefully will change at some point. I've done this whole thing before where it's just me on the air. So
That explains the
yeah, so I play whatever the fuck I want to play when it comes to that. But when it comes to making my music decisions, you know, there's a lot that kind of goes into it, and, you know, I mean, the first thing is, you know, does it sound like it's a hit? And that's always your gut feeling. You know, everybody can listen to a song and they instantly know whether they like it or not. And, you know, some songs you hear it one time and it's like, you know, you have that feeling. It's like, you're like, I'm really going to love this, or like, I'm going to listen to this a lot, or, you know, there's a feeling that comes with that. So, you know, I say it all the time with different programmers, anything, like, trust your gut, just because most of the time you're probably going to be right. And, you know, that plays a huge part in it. And then, you know, from there, you kind of get into all the politics behind it. You know, it's like, okay, like, you know, you got record labels to deal with, you got managers to deal with, you know, up until things shut down. It's like, you know, is the band going to be touring? Are they going to be doing any promo? You know, what does their fan base look like? You know, is the song streaming? You know, is it selling? You know, there's a lot of different, you know, measurable numbers that you can look at that can kind of go into making decisions like that. You know, so, you know, you take all of that into account. You take into account, you know, what are other radio stations doing? You know, just because I'm not playing something right now doesn't mean a station in, you know, in Los Angeles or in Phoenix or wherever, they could be playing it and they could be seeing something great off of it. And I'm currently missing the boat. you know? So there's a lot of those numbers that go into it, but at the end of the day, it starts with the feeling. And, you know, I'm not one to say like, you know, it's always, you know, like my gut is always 100% right. Like I got plenty of misses when it comes to hit songs. Like there's been plenty of songs where it's just like, all right, that was a hit and I fucking missed it. Sorry. Like, you know, it's going to happen.
What's the one that sticks out to you? What's the one where you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat going, why did I do that?
You know, I think that's probably taking it to the extreme with, you know, like, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's just music, like, you know, like,
Right.
but the probably the biggest one that I missed so far, was, Gautier with somebody that I used to know.
Right
Turned
on.
out to be a pretty big song.
Yeah, I heard that song once.
How did you do that?
Huh?
How did you do that?
How did I miss it?
Yeah.
I listened to it one time and I just didn't really like it, and I don't really hear it. I don't think it's gonna turn into anything.
This song sucks.
I mean, I was like,
damn it.
well, I mean, especially in my case, I was like, you know, like it's very slow. It's kind of got a little poppy feel. Like it doesn't sonically fit. Like I don't particularly get it. And then, you know, 3 months later, it's like, you know, you're just sitting there just screaming the lyrics out, and
Prince
like,
is handing them the Grammy.
yeah.
Oh, I love this song.
Yeah.
What's the one? Okay, so conversely, what's the one that you were sure of that other people were like, nah, you're crazy, and then it turns out you were right? Anything like that?
Probably the most recent one that I can think of was from Lovely the Band with the song Broken.
I love that song.
So
Love that song.
So they sent the song to me, and it was a one listen thing. It's like this is a hit. Like I love it. And the first call that I made, I talked to the record label, and I was like, hey, I want to say this was like in October or November, like when it had come out. So this would have been 2017, I think. So yeah, so like October, November of 2017. And I was like, hey, like I need a band for a St. Patrick's Day parade, you know, to come and play on a float. So, you know, I'll put this record in, like, let's bring them to town for this. Like it can be great. And the week after St. Patrick's Day, the record was #1, and it stayed on the chart for alternative, I want to say for close to 70 weeks or so, which,
Phenomenal.
and yeah, it was pretty impressive. I mean, to stay in the top 10 for 70 weeks that's a feat. I mean, the current #1 song at alternative is 21 Pilots, and it's been on the chart for 16 weeks. So, yeah.
Lovely. That's the band. That's
A band.
That's fantastic. Good. Well, good find, doggone it. That's one that Spotify threw me with via the algorithm that I went, yep, add to playlist immediately.
I'm actually surprised that you know who that is, John.
You know what? I know enough to know enough about enough. That's all I can tell you. All right. I know enough to be dangerous.
Hold on real quick. Phil, have you heard the group Cigarettes After Sex?
Yep.
Do you like them?
Yeah, I think they're all right. I think they've been like this close to having a hit. Like they're so close. They write good songs, but they just haven't had that song that's broken through quite yet. But
it's so different. That's what I like about them.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what, I mean. It makes them unique, but also at the same time, it makes it kind of difficult when it comes to the radio side of things.
Yeah.
Like if you stand out too much, like it's like I don't know about this quite yet, and it kind of makes people kind of shy away from it. But they are a good band. I forget how long it's been since they put something out. I really haven't seen anything recently. So
yeah, I think it was like last year. I think.
Okay, yeah.
Right on.
Hopefully the next album that they write, they'll put out a banger.
Right.
So talk about the big differences between the Detroit radio market or music scene and then Scranton, Pennsylvania, and then Louisville, Kentucky. Okay, how do they compare? What do they share in common, and then what are the big differences that you notice?
Well, the main difference from a radio side, I mean, obviously Detroit is a very big market. Detroit is, I think, number 13 in the country. And with that, the way that radio ratings are calculated is a little bit different. So the larger markets use PPM, which is personal people meters. So it basically looks like a little beeper that people carry around, and that picks up a signal that is encoded in your station and the frequency. And so beeper hears that and picks it all up.
Gotcha.
So that is different from Scranton and also from Louisville, where we are a diary market here. So it's literally mailing stuff out.
A what market?
Diary.
Oh, I thought you said something else. Okay. Beg your pardon. I thought you said diarrhea, and I'm like, what?
Oh.
That's terrible.
No, it's just shit. But no, we're a diary market. So they mail it out to you, and you actually physically fill it out saying, I listen to this station from this time to this time, and all of that. So the difference being is how you kind of program your station. So with people meters, you need to pick up the signal. So you just want people to be listening, and you want them to be listening for a long time. With diary markets, it's more about recall. You want them to remember you so that they remember to write down your station when they go to fill it out, because they're not going to just sit in real time and fill it out. They're going to go and get it at the end of the night, fill out what they listen to. So it's a little bit different when it comes to things like that. So it changes the way that you kind of program your station and also market your station. But when it comes to the actual physical markets with, Detroit, is very blue collar. You have a good amount of people that are working various shifts. So, your overnight shift is super important. Your night shift is super important. Whereas, when you get into other cities, like, you don't have as many overnight workers or anything like that. So it's more about your drive times and focusing on things like that. So, Detroit is very blue collar. So, you really connected with, a working kind of class, person. That was their thing. Like, they worked, they would they'd pull overtime, so that was really who you wanted to connect with the most, because that's the majority of who your listeners were. When I went to Scranton, it was, you get a little bit of a culture shock going from, a city that is fairly liberal, and then you end up somewhere that's a little more conservative and a lot older. And it's like, hey, like, all of you old coal miners, you're going to love Billie Eilish. Like, trust me. So, it was a different dynamic to approach. And, then coming to Louisville, like, Louisville's more of an up and coming city, like, similar to, how Austin was, when South by Southwest was starting in Austin, like, that's where Louisville is now. It's starting to bubble up.
Is okay. So you made the coming up similar to Austin way. So to me, from my perspective, Austin became a thing, and it reached kind of critical mass essentially in like 2012, 13, and then you had kind of a little exodus or exodi or whatever from areas of the country, hipper people going down to Austin, right? Fast forward to recently, and now people are complaining about Austin in some ways for the same reasons. So are you saying that you're seeing the same patterns in Louisville that Austin experienced like a decade ago?
Pretty much, yeah.
From a
Like
union standpoint, or from a, like a, not, I don't want to say gentrification, but from like a artistic cultural influx standpoint?
yes to both a little bit. You know, it is kind of becoming that. Like, you know, Louisville's very big for culinary arts. You know, we've had there are a few different chefs that appeared on things like, you know, like Top Chef and you know, and won seasons and stuff that have opened restaurants here. I think it's very much like a foodie kind of city. You know, artistically, there are a lot of different areas that are starting to, you know, kind of explode a little bit and become a lot bigger. You know, and you just see it with the amount of younger people that want to move to the city. You see it with, you know, like just the expression of, you know, of the arts, of, again, like the food, all that. Like, it's just, there's something about, you know, the culture in the city that is really starting to attract, you know, a lot more people back to the city. So, you know, it's, you know, it's kind of like it was with Austin starting out, like kind of like Portland, you know, Nashville to some degree. And, you know, you combine all of that with, you know, it's, you know, very cost effective to live here and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm starting to sound like a, you know, like a travel ad, like, come visit Louisville. We've got bourbon and cheap housing. You know,
Do you
so
do you see like a spike in like other businesses also opening because of that? You know, like
um,
stuff that wasn't there, you know, prior to maybe a few years ago.
um, a little bit, yeah. Like, again, a lot of what's been happening recently has been more in like kind of like food culture almost. So, you know, we're seeing a lot of different like locally owned places that are opening up, a lot of just like different places. Like, you know, it's kind of like you know, like at one point there was like that big bang of like cupcake places, like cupcakes were the thing. And then it moved on to, you know, like, okay, like ramen is the next thing, like, you know, and you see those trends. Well, like, we're kind of ahead of the curve a little bit with all of that. Like, we're trying to start the next trend. So that's
Gotcha.
maybe what you start to see, and you start to see, you know, the restaurants pop up, and then the city kind of builds out from there. You know, and then, you know, on top of everything that happens in the downtown area, like there was just a new there's a new stadium built for the soccer team that we have here, and like, so that's starting to see more businesses popping up around that to kind of, you know, expand that area. So, you know, it's just, you get a lot of building around focal points when it comes to the city. So, you know, that's mainly what I've seen for, you know, the past year and a half that I've been here, and, you know, even longer from what some people have told me.
So you were saying that, you know, restaurants popping up and, you know, businesses popping up around them and whatnot. With the pandemic going on though now, um, do you have any, you know, does any of your network, are any of them involved in those industries, or, you know, are any of your friends or colleagues, you know, feeling the effects of this right now?
I mean, a lot of my colleagues are, you know, we, just like, you know, most, you know, radio companies across the country, you know, we went through cuts, and we went through furloughs. You know, so, you know, we have a few people that are still furloughed and have been since April. Um, you know, and one of them lives in the same apartment complex that I do. He's two buildings over. So, um, you know, like we see it that way, but we also see it from, you know, from our sales side and the businesses that, you know, we really work with. Um, you know, some of them are just not spending money anymore. They're, you know, we've seen a lot of places that have closed down completely. Just they can't afford to keep anything open or pay people or anything like that. So I mean, it is really difficult in the area right now. Like, we still have a lot of unemployment, and I mean, I know it's like that across the country. You know, but you know, we're starting to get to a point where some things are opening back up and more people are starting to get back to work. And, you know, I think, kind of going back to what I was saying with, how radio is starting to become more local and more community oriented again, we're focusing a lot on that. So I think that relationship that we have with our listeners who are getting back to work, or our listeners that might be out of work, or even our clients that, haven't been spending money, we're able to find ways to kind of bring everybody together. So we have different programs right now, for, getting people back to work. Like on our website, employers can submit job openings. So that allows our listeners to see what's open if they're looking for a job. We're currently in the process of doing our job invasion promotion, where we're showing up at people's work and giving them free lunch and free swag and stuff like that. So we're trying to stay active in the community, just because we know that so many people are having a hard time with what's going on, or they, things are just so different that, their job is like, they don't know what's going to happen in another week or another month or anything.
What's been your greatest personal challenge during this pandemic?
Well, my smart answer would be covering the night shift for our top 40 station. I'll tell you what, man, like there's only so many things you can say about The Weeknd and Dua Lipa. Like you run out of shit to talk about. And honestly, that was just kind of that was an instance of me being caught in a position where it's like, where it's like, be like, oh, like, let me know if you need anything. And that they're not going to ask you to do anything. But like, it's one of those moments where it's like, oh, let me know if you need anything. Be like, yeah, can you actually help me move? Like right now, like, where it's like, oh shit, I didn't think you were actually going to ask me for anything. So that's what happened with this was, we had furloughs on our top 40 station. I was like, hey, like, I know it's tough. If you need me to help out with anything, just let me know. It's like, actually, can you cover nights? Can you do that? Sure. So, but that's me being, kind of a smart ass with that. It does suck, but, but I think the biggest, realistically, the biggest personal challenge that I've had is honestly just, it's the amount of work and, what's the best word that I can come up with for this? It's a lot of work that, I wasn't expecting to do, but, I'm fortunate that I'm doing it. And, when we had our cuts and our furloughs and all of that happening, I look at everybody that's in our office, and it's like, okay, well, this person and this person got cut completely, and these two people got furloughed. And in my mind, it was kind of like, well, why them and not me? Like, what is it that I have that made them say, like, we're going to keep you, but these people over here, we're not going to?
Did you feel guilty?
A little bit, because, I looked at, in my mind, I look at it as, okay, we have 5 stations in our building, and the bottom 2 stations that we have, I'm in charge of. And that has nothing to do with, anybody's abilities or anything like that. Like, we have 2 heritage stations that just beat the shit out of everybody all the time. Our 3rd station, that it always does well, and it's been performing really well. And, both of my stations are growing. They're newer. I think, the alternative station is coming up on 2 years old. And then the Jack FM station that I have is, I think, coming up on 3 years old. So they're relatively new, and they're still growing brands. So it takes time to build those. But, I look at it as, okay, we have my stations that, you know, are not as big, not as, you know, revenue generating, anything like that. Yet I'm here and a program director for our top 40 station, our number one station, isn't. And having to, you know, I think there was like some guilt, just that's kind of just built into it. And then after that happens and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to take on these responsibilities that this person had. I'm going to take on these responsibilities. And you almost feel like, okay, like, you know, what if they don't bring people back? You know, what if they just say like, this is working, you're doing fine. It's like, well, am I though? Things are okay.
Right.
But also, like, you know, if you make me keep doing all of this work all the time, I'm going to just crumble.
You're gonna burn out.
Yeah. So I think part of that is, you know, is that burnout factor, is, you know, the guilt that kind of comes with it and all of that. So it's more of like a internal struggle when it comes to all of it, you know. But at the end of the day, like I said, like I'm still very grateful, and I feel very fortunate that I'm still employed. I'm still doing what I love to do. And, you know, what more can I really ask for when it comes to, you know, my career right now?
Do they have kind of a time frame of when to bring people back?
They don't know.
Still up in the air?
No, I mean, when it first happened, the kind of generic timeline they said was July, and one more day. So, you know, I've seen different companies, you know, have put out their statements. I think iHeart was one, Cumulus, Beasley, like they've all put out statements, and they all have different timelines. Some have said, you know, furloughed employees will come back in September. I can't remember which group it was, said it's going to last through the end of the year. You know, so I think it just kind of depends company to company, but you know, it's not an easy time for any of our stations across the country or for any of these companies. You know, I think we are going to see a lot of sales to, you know, to independents, you know, which overall can be a good thing. You know, but it's so kind of up in the air. It's kind of too tough to tell right now.
Another question I have for you though, because of all the COVID going on, you know, I'm sure you guys, you know, do like, you know, deal with like summer events, you know, promotion stuff or, you know, going to concerts, you know, maybe promoting something like that. You know, is there something that you know, got to miss this year that you were kind of looking forward to that didn't happen? You know, in your area? So
many things. So just to kind of give a little bit of a backstory. So I got to Louisville end of March of last year, and 1 month in was my first event, and oddly enough, it was a 420 event, and we had one of our other talents for a different station was helping with the event, and she was driving our station vehicle, and she hydroplaned and crashed the vehicle and totaled it. She was fine. She was okay.
I did that to mine on June 19th.
There you go.
Terrible. Please continue.
Yeah. So totaled the vehicle on April 20th of 19. Okay. So I went without a station vehicle all the way up until February of this year, which was insane. So I couldn't go places. I had magnets that I would literally put on the side of my car, and that would be our station vehicle if we had anything going on. So February rolls around, finally have a new vehicle, and it's beautiful. I can't wait to take it out. COVID. Fuck you and your events. You can't go anywhere anymore. Like, So there were a ton of things that we had planned, and they ended up getting shut down. We had different concerts that were planned that got shut down. But the one that, I shouldn't say the one, the main thing that has happened, at least in the music industry, is in Louisville, we have 4 major festivals. We have Forecastle, which happens in the summer. And then Danny Wimmer does the Trifesta. So it's 3 back-to-back weekends where there's a country festival with Hometown Rising. There's Bourbon and Beyond, which is more blues rock kind of focused. And then Louder Than Life, which is like the heavy rock festival. So, and those usually happen in September. So 4 major 3-day festivals all canceled. So a huge moneymaker for the city and for our stations with the amount of promotion that we do, kind of going into those. So, that was a real bummer. But I mean, it's all the little things, it's like, all the baseball games that we would have, they're not really doing a whole lot. Like our soccer team here, they just opened the brand new stadium this year and they can't fill it to capacity just because of everything, so we miss out on a lot of those opportunities just to kind of, do things in the community. So, I mean, that's really the biggest bummer. And, on top of that, like when it comes to the radio side and radio promotion and giveaways, I mean, nothing does better than concert tickets. It's like, okay, well, now I got no concert tickets to give away. So the fuck do I do? And there is that panic that sets in where it's like,
give them a ride in the promotion car.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, shit, the way things are going, we might use it as an Uber.
That's funny. All right. Well, let's segue into something a little bit more uplifting. What would you say has been your favorite thing that you've done in your career in radio that you spearheaded?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it has been, kind of the development of some of the baby bands that, were just starting out. Like, we talked about Lovely the band, being able to have them on a St. Patrick's Day float when they, have a #1 song in the country, and weird, odd fun fact, I guess, Scranton's St. Patrick's Day parade is like the 3rd biggest in the world. Who would have thought? So, yeah, just weird. But, being able to do something like that for them and then kind of seeing their career start to flourish after that, being able to, to connect listeners with artists, with meet and greets and things like that, you can do so many big things. That you could put together a festival or whatever, and people are going to enjoy going to a show. But I've always found that like the real moments that I remember the most is like just a good example. The last show that I was at was in December. We did a Christmas show for our station here, and we had Angels and Airwaves playing. And we were doing a meet and greet with them. And I had a listener who was standing at our table and talking about how she won tickets and she is so excited to be there and she loves the band. She's got tattoos that, have lyrics, and she's all about it. And, it's like, okay, well, do you want to meet him? Like, come on, just tears. But like, it's those moments that you remember the most, where you're really creating an experience for somebody that, they otherwise wouldn't have. And, being in that industry and doing these things, you sometimes take it for granted. It's like, oh yeah, like there's meet and greet, whatever, like, I'll go say hi and stuff like that. But like, when you take into account that, your average listener doesn't get to do all these things that you do. So that's really like the stuff that I enjoy the most is kind of that one-on-one, like making a moment for somebody.
That's great. That's great.
I actually, to that point of you bringing that up, actually, it's kind of a favor you did for me. Some years back when I was in After the Tide, you got our song played at the Red Wings game.
Yep.
At the Joe.
The Motor City Music Minute.
Yeah, and that was, it wasn't, the biggest thing in the world, but I mean, at that point in time, I believe our band just broke up. It was actually like a month after we broke up, coincidentally, but it was still like cool. And like, we got to go to the game and stuff and, and hear our song, over the big ass speakers and, everyone that's in that stadium is hearing our song. And it was you made that possible. So thank you. I never got to thank you for it, but
you're welcome. But I mean, and that goes straight to my point though, is, we did that. I think we did that promotion 4 years with the Red Wings. So 4 years, half the season at home, you're talking, what? Yeah. I mean, so you're talking
playoffs.
Yeah. So, I mean, probably 250 home games over that time. So, you got 250, bands that got played for that. Some of them were probably, different songs from different bands. But, from my perspective, it's like, okay, well, I did that, 200 some times. But from your perspective, like, that's something that you don't forget, So, again, it's like we take it for granted, but it's a memory that you have. So it's those little things that, I think really, stand out the most. Like that's like, to me, like that's fucking cool that you remember that, like something that I did, you remember and, was such a moment in your life that, it's like, that's not an experience that everybody gets. So, it's fucking rad.